Continue on with Visual Basic, and this time we're going to have buttons that are going to modify the properties of labels, and I'll show you an automatic way to get things to modify. So previously we've learned that when you have objects such as buttons, let me put some buttons here. I'll put how about 4 buttons on a screen? Button 1, button 2, button 3, and button 4. And notice as I drag them and move, a line appears, and if I let go when the line appears, it'll line it up perfectly. I'm going to do the same thing with labels. I'm going to go label 1, label 2, label 3, and label 4. And so you can see the lines. I can align vertically with the labels, and I can also align, vertically with the buttons and horizontally with the label above it. And they're all lined up perfectly. So previously we learned that you can modify the properties of the text. For example, label 1, I go in here and I can modify the property and I can make it blank. And when I press enter, it modifies to blank. But I can also do it at runtime. And so I could click on button 1 and I could say me.label1.text equals anything in quotation marks, and that anything would appear. So when I press play and I click on the button, that would appear. And so we've done that with some different objects, the radio buttons previously, and other different objects. Well, also we can get the code to automatically run. There's something called form load, and let me just show you how that works. If I double click on anything, at the top here it says, you can see the different objects I have. I've got an object called button 1, an object called button 2, and button 3, and button 4, and also objects of label 1, 2, 3, and 4. But if I go to general, I've got form. And I can go to form, and under form 1, or form 1 events, I can say when form 1 loads, and I can scroll down here to load, and so it will create another subroutine. And so this is going to happen when what? Form 1 loads. Oh, watch what happens here. So I could, for example, make label 1 when the form loads, say ASDF LASK DF, and I'll get rid of it from the button code, for example. And when I press play, the property is modified in the form load event. So we've now had objects modify in the properties, objects modify when you click a button, and objects modify in an event that automatically happens, such as form 1 loads. Okay, last thing I want to show you is why is there quotation marks and why is there sometimes not quotation marks. So let's start by putting something in quotation marks. In fact, I'm going to put in quotation marks in label 1. I'm going to put a blank. So label 1, label 2 is going to be the same, blank. And label 3, the text is going to equal blank. And label 4, the same thing, the text is going to equal blank. And now, even though I could do that at design time, at runtime, watch what happens when I press play. All the labels turn to blanks. Well, what happens if I wanted to make all the buttons say things? So for example, I'm going to go to this event here, form 1 load, and I could do the same thing with buttons. I could say my button 1, me.button1 text, is going to equal 5 plus 2 to the power, and if I want to make something to the power, I hit shift and 6. And that means to the power. So this would do 2 cubed, 2 to the power of 3. So this would add 5 plus 2 to the power of 3, and 2 to the power of 3 is 8, so 5 plus 3 would be 8. So it would be 13 rather. Is this going to display 13, or is it going to display 5 plus 2 to the power of 3? Let's take a look and just see what happens. And I'm going to do this with button 2. I'm going to put in quotation marks 4 divided by 2. and I'll add 5 to that. And let's do another calculation for button 3. So button 3, I'm going to do a calculation of 3 plus 4 squared. And how about for the last one, let's do 7 minus 3 plus 2. So easy calculations. When I press play, it didn't do the calculation. It just displayed what was in quotation marks. And that's because in the code, this is called a string literal. If you put quotation marks, it will put the characters exactly what they are literally. Now I'm going to change this and watch what happens. When I click on button 1, I'm going to get label 1 to equal what button 1 is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do, without the quotes, I'm going to say label 1 is equal to 5 plus 2 to the power of 3. And that's what happens when I click on button 1. So when I click button 1, what I'm going to do is button 1's text says 5 plus 2 to the power of 3, but the command of clicking, it's going to assign without quotes to the label. And we'll see what happens. Let's do the same thing for button 2. And so for button 2, I'm going to take label 2 and set it equal to 4 divided by 2 plus 5 without quotation marks. And I'm going to go to button 3, and for button 3 clicking, I'm going to say the label 3 is equal to 3 plus 4 divided by 2 without the quotes. And finally, when button 4 is clicked, I'm going to say that the label 4 is equal to 7 minus 3 plus 2 without the quotes. And so this is the code I've written. And when I press play, form load takes place, and it loads the labels with nothing in quotes, and it loads a button with this in quotes. Now if I click button 2, for example, what is going to happen, here's button 2, a 7 is going to appear there because it's going to do 4 divided by 2 plus 5, and so a 7 is going to appear. It's going to do the calculation. It's not going to display 4/2 plus 5. And you can see it does the same for the rest.